Operating a home building business looks simple from the outside. You buy land, you build a house, and you sell it. But that surface level view hides the part that actually makes or breaks most builders. This is an extremely capital intensive business, and if you don't understand how cash actually moves, you will always feel pressure, no matter how good your homes are or how strong market demand looks. So what I want to do in this video is walk through what it really takes to operate a home building business day to day, why cash matters more than most people expect, and why trying to do everything yourself eventually becomes the thing that slows the business down. If you get these parts right, the business gets calmer. If you get them wrong, everything feels harder than it should. Most people underestimate just how capital heavy this business really is. You're spending money long before a buyer ever shows up. Cash goes out months and sometimes years before it comes back. Land, design, permits, materials, labor, all of it happens up front. And unlike other businesses, you can't just stop when cash feels tight. Jobs are already in motion. Crews are scheduled. Carrying costs keep running, whether sales are fast or slow. And this is where a lot of builders get into trouble. They focus on the final margin, the final profit, but what they don't think about enough is timing. On paper, a deal can look great. In real life, cash can be stretched thin for long periods of time. And when that happens, pressure starts to show up in decisions. You start making choices you normally wouldn't make. You delay things that shouldn't be delayed. You react instead of plan. And that pressure, it compounds quickly. That's why in our business, we set a business summary up that predicts starts, predicts finishes, so that it's predictable. So we know when cash is coming in, when cash is going out, and how much cash negativity or how much owner equity we have at all times in the business. So operating a healthy building business means thinking in terms of these cash cycles, not just in results. How long money's out before it comes back, how many projects you can realistically carry at once, and what happens if a sale takes longer than expected. If you don't plan for these gaps, growth is fragile. Another thing that gets underestimated is how much mental load this business carries. There are a lot of moving parts all the time. And when you're trying to personally hold them all, something eventually breaks. This is where the idea of doing everything yourself starts to fall apart. A lot of builders, especially early on, they act as salespeople. They're the face of the company. They're the one the clients want to talk to. They are the rainmaker. We did that for a really long time. I jumped into sales. I was constantly in front of clients, nights, weekends, walkthroughs, follow-ups. If there was a meeting, you had to be there. For a while, that worked. But eventually it became clear that the business was growing faster than your time can support. Every hour I spent selling was an hour I wasn't working on operations, systems, capital planning, or long-term decisions and viewing the business from a 30-foot level versus being in the weeds. The business didn't need more of me in meetings. It needed better structure. It needed better systems. And letting go of sales was not easy. So as an owner, there's a natural belief that no one can sell like you, that clients only trust you, that stepping back will hurt revenue. What actually happened was the opposite. By bringing in a dedicated salesperson and trusting them with that responsibility, it freed us up to operate the business instead of being trapped inside of it. You weren't spending weekends in meetings, you weren't meeting clients out on site, you weren't reacting to every single lead, and you weren't tying revenue directly to your personal availability. And that shift, it allowed you to focus on parts of the business that I can handle better. Capital planning, risk management, intentional growth instead of accidental growth. Those things don't show up in sales pipeline, but they are what keeps the business healthy over a long period of time. And this is a critical realization that can be very, very difficult to get to yourself. You just cannot operate a capital intensive business as a solo operator forever. At some point, your involvement becomes the constraint. Delegation isn't about giving up control. It's about protecting your attention for the areas where judgment actually matters. Sales is critical, but it's not the only critical function in your business. When owners stay stuck too long, everything else starts to suffer. Cash planning becomes reactive, processes stay informal, growth depends on personal effort versus the systems that really help you grow. That's why that approach just doesn't work. Operating a home building business well means accepting that leverage matters. And leverage doesn't just come from money. It comes from people, it comes from systems, it comes from technology. And that doesn't depend on you being everywhere at once. It requires trust, trusting others to do their job well, trusting systems instead of memory, trusting that stepping back from certain roles actually strengthens the business instead of weakening it. This doesn't mean removing yourself. It means placing yourself where you create the most value. For most owners, that's not being at every meeting or answering every call. It's making sure the business has enough cash, enough process to breathe. It's sequencing projects correctly. It's managing risk before it comes visible. When all those things are handled well, everything else becomes manageable. When they're ignored, even strong markets feel stressful. At the end of the day, operating a home building business is less about building houses and more about managing pressure. Pressure around cash, pressure around time, pressure around decisions. If you can respect those realities and build the business around them, growth becomes sustainable and predictable. If you pretend they don't exist, your growth will always feel fragile. So if you're running or thinking about running a home building business, you gotta ask yourself one simple question. Where is my time actually creating leverage? And where am I holding on out of habit instead of necessity? If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. If something in this video piqued your interest or you want to learn more about anything I mentioned, feel free to reach out and we'll get back to you.